Good morning to one and all. Let me welcome you on this very special day of the World Wetland Day. And on this very occasion, we at the Viva College Herbarium and the Department of Botany have decided to take you on a tour at the wetlands nearby our area in Virar. So, throughout this today's session of this virtual excursion of the World Wetland Day, we will take you and we will make you visit a series of plants throughout this entire course of your wetland journey. Let us encounter the plants, the animals and their interactions all together, and we will see how we can enter into the lives of these plants. Let us move ahead. Wetlands serve as one of the important aspects of our present ecosystem, and that is the reason this place is one of very important parts of the ecosystem of our land in Mumbai. We have various types of wetlands which we can find throughout the entire area. One such wetland are these temporary wetlands, where you get to see seasonal variation with regards to the water content and the plant diversity in this region. If you can see behind me, over here, there is a beautiful vast land of plants growing on the water surfaces. This is a very typical depiction of a wetland, and that is the reason a typical representation is being shown in this wide view range. Now if you come ahead with me, I will show you a plant which is a typical known plant of the wetland nature. This plant is called as Typha and is commonly called as Nushaban. Basically the name derives is because of its inflorescence. If you see the inflorescence, you can clearly notice the resemblance of the ban, which is the typical notation why the name has been derived. This plant is known for its ability to grow in extreme water conditions, extreme saline conditions, and can occupy a wide variety and a wide land of aspects in this. This plant can also be used in various other purposes with regards to making various products as ropes and other elements, and hence as an economically important plant. The first plant which we seen was Typha, which was a very typical aquatic plant. Now let us see some plants which you find on a terrestrial land which is near the wetland region itself. Over here, if you can see, this is a plant commonly called as Ran Lavang. Now the name so is derived because if you see the fruiting, it typically resembles the lavang or the clove which we find in our spice box. This plant is botanically is coming from the family of Onagraceae, a plant a representative from the winter climate. So when you see winter coming into session, these plants arise and increase its population on a wide note. So this is like one of the indicators of a winter habitat. Here is another plant from the family Euphorbia. Now if you see this plant, it has a very typical notation that if you break the stem, it exudes milky latex, which is a very characteristic feature of this family. This plant is called as Euphorbia Heterophylla or its relatives. Now if you see this plant, it has a very typical inflorescence, which is Cyathium inflorescence, which is known to every botany student from FY. And this is a plant which can be found throughout this entire land and is also a representative of a wetland species. entire habitat. You can also know that this plant is consumed by many people as a vegetable, and hence is also having economic value. So if you see the entire patch from the beginning to the end, you will see this entire place is diversified with Ipomia Aquatica. It's a member of the family Convolvulaceae and commonly called as the morning glory. Now the main reason why it is called as morning glory is because the flower blossoms or blooms in the morning. It opens during the wee hours of the morning because of the less intensity of sunlight, and it remains up till the afternoon and then closes up throughout the evening region. Another aquatic plant or another plant which grows next to regions of water content where it is high, this is Astricantha Longifolia, a plant to be very careful about because it has a very peculiar arrangement of spines on the entire body. So if you ever go and touch it, you are sure to be affected by it. Adjoining that, if you can see, there are extremely small extremely small plants which are present floating on the surface of the water. That is botanically called as Spirodilla, and it is also one of the aquatic plants which are found and growing on a very large scale in wetland regions, and our wetland is no exception to that diversity. Moving ahead, to my extreme right, you can see the plant which is called as Gypis. Now this plant is commonly, we all know it as boar. And if you see, this plant has a very characteristic feature of having spiny stipules present on the axil of the leaves. And that is why it is very prominent and identifiable. This plant is very typical in showing its straggling habitat. Obviously over here you can see it has just begun to straggle by the branching patterns, and that is also a characteristic feature of this particular plant. Let us now move ahead. Now if you come over here, you can see the entire patch which is completely covered with Asteraceae member. Now if you come closer and have a look, this plant is called as Ibomia. Now this plant has one very interesting feature, and that is the essential oils which are excreted from the leaves. The moment you crush the leaves, you get a very strong essence which is emitted out of the plant. Very strong medicinal and aromatic essence. And because this plant is scattered along this entire patch, you will find the fragrance emitted in the entire environment in this region. If you come closer to see the inflorescence, it has a very typical capitulum inflorescence, and you can see these are all the ray florets which are arranged in this manner. Now this is another Asteraceae member from the family of Blumia, which we had seen ago. This plant is called as Bhringraj. We all know Bhringraj for its ability for nourishment of the hair and various other medicinal properties. Botanically, this plant is called as Eclipta prostrata or Eclipta alba. Now this plant, if you see throughout this entire wetland, you will find tremendous amount of patches of this particular plant. It grows in extreme dense patches. And in the commercial world, where there is a high requirement for this plant, it is important to note where you can find this population. It is a typical Asteraceae member, and hence you can see the capitulum inflorescence very vividly displayed in its whole beauty. Now if you look a little more back over there, right at the extreme, you can see the plant which is botanically called as Ipomia Carnia. Now this is again another member of the morning glory family or the convolvulaceae family. The plant which we had already seen earlier called as Ipomia Aquatica, it's a relative of that plant. Marathi mein, if you know, this plant is called as Besharam. The simple reason behind calling it Besharam is because it can grow in every nook and corner. Wherever it finds good amount of water, a little amount of water, it starts to emerge and flourishes in that region on a very large scale. This is another plant. This is commonly called as Kurd. We all might have known this plant because this plant has two major important usage. One is because it is used as a non-conventional vegetable in Maharashtra and Mumbai, to be very specific. Besides that, it is also offered during the Ganpati festival to Lord Ganesha. Now if you see this, you can find this plant in very executive patches throughout this entire region. And that is a very characteristic feature because it grows in dense populations. And when it starts, and this is one of the plants which serves as a weed to this particular region, along with the plant which we previously seen, which was Blumia. So these are the weeds which you find throughout the entire wetlands, which are not a typical wetland plant, but are found on a very high density growing in this particular region. Now if you see this inflorescence, it is a typical spike inflorescence, and these structures which are present, they are nothing but the papery perianth members, which is a characteristic feature of this particular plant. The inflorescence which is showing pink color region are the young flowers, and you will see that the stamens depict the anthers, and the stamens depict the coloration of pink, which is a very, very identifying and an important character of this particular plant. Moving ahead, now before I venture into something more in detail, let me introduce you to one of the second resource person, who is my very own student, Mr. Harsh Jadhav, and an alumni of the Department of Botany. He will take you throughout the course and move you throughout the session ahead. Harsh, please welcome ahead.
Thank you, sir, for giving me opportunity. Now let's begin with another part of the session. As you can see behind, there are lots of birds over here. The main another point of wetland is we can see various types of water bodies and birds over here. As there is a water bodies, there are also some fishes and phytoplankton. So the birds can come here and have some feeding. It also becomes a feeding ground to the birds. So as I have told you, it is also a feeding ground to birds. Now you can see there are various birds over there. As they have limited a variety of foods, they are fed over here and take a shelter in those typhas behind there. There is also a small ecosystem of such small birds and water birds which are dependent on this life source for their feeding and resting point. here you can see one of the common, most commercial use member of the family, known for its essential oil. Essential oil. This is called as Ranthurus, commonly known as botanical name. Well, as a volatile oil, it has volatile oils over here in the leaf. If you crush the leaves, you can smell the volatile oils from the leaf, as it has glandular hairs on the leaves. Other specific character of this plant is these nutlets, fruit-like nutlets and persistent calyx. If you hear carefully, you can hear sound of it. Listen carefully. Well, here we can see one of the most well-known plant, botanical known as Mimosa pudica, or commonly known as touch me not plant or Lazaro. Now, as we can see here, this phenomenon is known as Typonastica, which means scientifically response to stimuli or the touch or the vibrations to the plants of leaves of the plants. See here. Here you can see a depiction of burnt place. Even though it's burnt, the ashes here provides aids or revival to the various plants like Blumia or any various other grasses over here. Here we can see a very typical example of family Cucurbitaceae, well known as Loofah, which have specific characteristics like unisexuals, which have two separate male and female reproductive parts. On the left you can see the male flower, and on the right you can see female flower which has an inferior ovule. Now it is also pollinated by various insects. Now the specific characteristics of this plant is extra axillary tendrils. Now you can see there are various tendrils over here, which is also a live example of spring, which is derived directly from the nature. On my back side you can see many plants which is also known as castor. Well, there is one of the most commercial plant known for castor oil, which we use for various pains like acne, or any body aches. Here we can see they have very abundant variety of plants. From here, Kiran sir will take you the another and last aspect of our session. Kiran sir, please take over.
Thank you, Harsh. Now we'll move forward and I will show you the different aspect of the wetland. Let's go and see all those aspects. Now we'll move on to the different aspect of the wetland. Now here you can see this entire wetland. Here you can see this is the complete entire. As we have seen earlier, that wetland, that it was a freshwater. Now if you see this one, this is quite saline. Because of this reason, here you can see the vegetation or the diversity of plant is quite a less. Now let us move on. Let me show you one very important plant which is commonly found at this place. Now this plant is commonly known as the Khariji Bhaji in Marathi, and the scientific name of this plant is the Pochulacastrum. Now this is the typical type of the halophyte. Now let me tell you, the halophyte means the plant which is commonly grown in a saline water. Okay, as I have told you earlier that this area is quite saline as compared to the other habitat we have seen. Now this plant, if you see, it's known as the accumulator type of the halophyte. Okay, if I crush this leaf, inside this you can see the mucilage in it. Okay, so that is why this is called as what? Accumulator type of the halophyte. The plant name, again I'll tell, this is a Suda meriti, this is the Sessivum pochulacastrum, sorry, and commonly known as the Khariji Bhaji. And in the Shravan season, this is a delicacy. Most of the people during the Shravan season, they make the vegetable out of it. And obviously this plant is commonly growing in a saline area, that is why you don't need to add a salt in this vegetable.
Free style and free stigma, characteristic of this particular family.
Let's move on to the next plant. Now this is the Suda verticosa. Okay. Now this is also one of the type of the accumulator type of the halophyte, which is commonly grown in this habitats. Okay. Now this is also, you can see, this is a typical Chenopodiaceae member. Okay. Quite woody it is. Okay. And as I told you earlier, the leaf has a mucilage. Here you can see in this also, the leaves contain a good amount of mucilage. Let me show you one more halophytic plant. can you see over there? There are patches of the tree. Those patches are Abyssinias. Now let me show you another mangrove plant, that is the Aegiceros corniculata. In such habitat, this plant is commonly associated with the another true mangrove, that is the Abyssinia. Now how to identify this Aegiceros plant? That is, here you can see there are white color flowers. Now this white color flower has a typical smell. Now the smell is like a rotting banana. If you come to the field, then you can easily able to identify these flowers with help of this white color flower. Now, here you can see there are sedges, which is commonly found in the wetlands. So now here if you see this entire vegetation, you will get to understand that this is the transition point between the freshwater habitat and this saline water habitat. Even also here you can see there are bulbing bloom over here, and the typical mangrove flora in this vegetation. The Suda, as I showed you earlier, Sesuvium, and even the sedges and dairies and this Aegiceros. So here you can see all the floras which is commonly found in the wetland also and in mangrove area. Now let me show you how to identify Abyssinia. Now you can see this, in this case, this is the Abyssinia marina. Now how to identify? See the leaf tip. It's acute, and at the back side of the leaf, here you have the presence of hairs. Now let me compare this species with another Abyssinia, that is the Abyssinia officinalis. The same plant flower you can compare. This is the Abyssinia marina and this is the Abyssinia officinalis. So these are two very commonly found in this area, even entire Mumbai. And one more important character, here you can see the nematophores, which are also known as the breathing groups. And in this nematophores, it has a small pore on it, which is very essential for the gaseous exchange. Now let us see one last concept. Now I have earlier shown you this plant. This is what? This is a Suda. Okay, remember? And if you see this here, in this patch, you can see the green color over here. But when you compare this plant with this patch, so you can able to differentiate between the color variations. So these are the variations you are going to observe in such wetland. Now, I want to call Hansel and Harsh to conclude this session.
Okay, I hope you enjoyed the session, all of you all. This was very first trail from the Department of Botany and Viva College Herbarium. I hope you all enjoyed it and have taken at least some aspect of wetland into your life, and are going to keep this concept about conserving wetlands, because ultimately wetlands is one of the very most important ecosystems of our nature. Before officially winding up, let me thank the people who has played a very significant role in the success of this particular virtual excursion. let me officially thank our principal, Dr. A.P. Pandey, our vice principal, Mrs. Prajakta Paranspe, the Department of Botany head, IQAC coordinator and vice principal, Dr. Deepa Verma, for their constant support and guidance, without which we would not be able to do this on such platform. So let me wind up this session. Hoping to see you soon. We will probably do more such videos where we will show you even different aspects of wetland in different seasons. Probably in the coming monsoon we may come up with another video, another session for you all with regards to wetland. Till then, take care, be safe, stay healthy and stay with nature. Thank you very much.